Right now, we're going to take a moment to actually dive in a little bit further. You know, every single Heart and Soul, we hear a leadership talk. This is a stakeholders meeting, like we said. You can't have a stakeholders meeting without hearing from the board, without hearing from the CEO, without hearing from the people in charge. And I'm just really grateful that we have the pastors that we have. You know, Dakota, Jam, and I were talking about everything that took place in 2020. I promise you, none of that would have happened without the leadership of our senior pastors, Pastor Rich and Rich Wilkerson. Come on, put your hands together for them. I'm going to welcome them onto the stage, and we're going to go ahead and start our interview. Come on, put your hands together for our pastors.
Hey, Adrian.
How are you?
Doing
good? You look great.
Thank you. You look great. I'm grateful to be here. There's nothing like Heart and Soul. I love it.
This is absolutely incredible. We started our day very early, Adrian, right here. It is day 17 of 21 days of prayer and fasting. And we actually kicked off 12 hours ago, right here at 7:30 in the morning with a whole team, hundreds of people on YouTube and Zoom, praying, seeking God. Shout out to Kat Rouse, who I think right now is at Design District, who preached a powerful message this morning. But I'm just grateful for a church that's full of energy, that leans into the moment. Got a packed room over here of people that are leaning into what we call studio church. But I also am so grateful that we got a room full of people in the Design District and our brand new first ever purchased our own, it's our asset, ladies and gentlemen, our very own building. So
Amazing.
We're pumped to be here tonight. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and today is a big day, not just here at VU,
Yes.
but in our nation in general. And, you know, I believe that at the end of this day, we'll take a moment to pray, but it is a big day.
It's a massive day with obviously the inauguration of a brand new president. And there has been a year really full of turmoil and division. But I'm really believing as we step into 2021 that here we are today. I know what the church is supposed to do. The church is called to pray for our leaders. The church is called to be peacemakers. And I'm really believing as we step into this transition as a nation, that as the church actually goes, all right, what's our part to play? We'll keep saying the same thing. It's to humble ourselves and to pray. And we believe that God will heal our land. And so congratulations to President Joe Biden. And I know at VU Church that we're committed, like every president who's ever been inaugurated and been voted in this nation, that we're going to play our part and pray. So however you feel about that, that's how we're playing it. And so we're not a political church. We're a church that has one message. His name is Jesus. Nobody voted Jesus in. He's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so we're going to pray and play our part.
Awesome. I'm grateful for it. So why don't we just get right into it?
Yeah.
Tonight is, like we said, plenty times, Heart and Soul, internal meeting, leaders meeting. But for you guys, as our senior pastors, why are nights like tonight critical to the health of our church?
Well, I'll go first, babe.
You look beautiful, buddy.
Thank you. I love you. I'm 15 weeks pregnant.
Let's go.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's so funny with the third one. It's like people ask me, and I'm like, I should probably find out what week I am. But yes, I made sure I am actually 15
with baby
weeks.
number
You forget
one,
sometimes that you're pregnant.
With baby number one, we like had the vegetable app.
Yeah.
We knew every
size. Everyone.
Baby number three, it's like, yeah, it's coming.
She'll be here soon.
I know.
You know?
Do you think we're going to give her as much attention as Wyatt got?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And you know, sharing the love is healthy for them, right? Like, it's good. Big families are fun. Why is Heart and Soul important? I think that's the reason why I value it, is because healthy families make healthy churches. And it's very important for us to recalibrate our hearts with the heartbeat of God. It's so easy to pick up society's measure of success. It's so easy to think that the way that society thinks we should organize our time is the way that we should organize our time. And what we should give our focus to should be what other people give their focus to. I think Heart and Soul draws our eyes to eternity. I think it draws our eyes to the mission of this city. I was driving over here tonight, and as I pass downtown, every time I see those high rises lit up, it lights my heart up, because it reminds me that the mission of VU, we're just getting started. It should be humbling how many millions of people are in our city that still don't know that the community of VU exists. I can't wait for the day that every level of every one of those high rises, every apartment room, every home knows that if they want to be a part of a community, there's a community. And so sometimes we can get wrapped up in going, yes, God's done so much, but what he's done before is not going to supersede what he wants to do in front of us. And so we have to continue to challenge ourselves. We can't settle, and we can't get comfortable, and we can't think that what we invested in the past is going to bring a harvest tomorrow. And so I think I love Heart and Soul because it reminds us that we are not the spectators, that we are on a mission, and that God has entrusted Miami to us. Amen? God has entrusted this city to us. I want to be faithful. I want to walk it out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think a lot of people are attending tonight for the 6th time, the 5th time. They've been here before, but a lot of people are attending tonight for the first time. When we did Platform Huddle over there was at least 10 people that raised their hand that are here for the very first time. And I think a lot of people are wondering what your perspective is on what it means to be heart and soul. So if you had a criteria, what would that criteria be?
Finish the growth track, be in a crew, attend every Sunday, give faithfully. No,
I really feel like your message Sunday laid out so beautifully what it means to be heart and soul. That was one of the best messages I've ever heard. If you haven't heard it, you need to go back and listen to it because I think it's so instrumental to the mission of our church. But I really think like heart and soul, when you explained to us what Jesus meant when he was saying you have to hate your mother or father, the willingness of that it's not an active hate, it's a comparative hate. That nothing compares to Jesus, that I'm placing him on the pedestal and the altar of my life like that. I just love that so much. Can we put our hands together for that message? That was amazing.
You're very kind. I think part of even your question is exciting to me because I suppose maybe one of the challenges that we are facing is I sense such new interest and such new engagement. I think our heart on these nights is that we want to bring everybody on the journey. But going on the journey is always an individual decision. You have to decide if you want to continue to step into the future. And so when you say, what does it look like to be kind of heart and soul? What's our perspective? We could give lots of different characteristics, and we do a lot of teaching like that, a lot of leadership teaching. But I think more importantly than all of those little qualities and criteria is simply a position of your heart with a lean in. I remember when we first started the church, we used to talk, and it was so important because it was just, a group of people in the studio no larger than this, and getting a service done. Even tonight, we're still learning how to do church in the studio, and I hope the sound was okay over there in the design district. We're still trying to figure out how to mix live sound and studio sound and all of these things that none of us ever signed up to do. But it reminds me of the early days because just to put a church service on, you couldn't afford not to have somebody there. And so we would have such clear accountability about what time you got there, how many services you were gonna do all day that day. If you left early, why did you leave early? And I remember teaching early down and going, hey, listen, here's the reality. The reality is you can't be at everything. But we want to have a church that your heart is to be at everything. We want to have a church that if you're on vacation, man, I'm on vacation, but my heart's with you. Hey, I couldn't make it to I Love My City because it's my daughter's birthday and family came in town, but my heart is there with you. And I think that's a lean in. And I suppose the reason why I think nights like this are important, you and I were talking about it before, this is not another program. It's not another event. The last time we gathered like this, I think it was about 1,100 of us at the Watsco Center in that little rec center in January. I preached a message called about happy to be in the room. And I think that you followed up with a message a couple months later called happy to be in the Zoom. And that call is still taking place right now. We thought it was going to be like a 6-week call. It turned into a 16-month, we don't know how much longer. But it's a position of it's the same message over and over again. And I think what's exciting is that there's a lot of people that are entering, Adrian, into the VU story, the VU narrative, in a pandemic, in quarantine. And with it, it's like, this is the only church they've ever known, and they're loving it. I think the people that are struggling are the people that go, I entered into this story under a much different narrative, context, and picture, and I'm having a hard time adjusting and pivoting and changing with where we're at today. And I think there's this idea that, hey, I will re-engage once it gets back to normal. But I don't know if there's any guarantee that the future is going to look anything like it did in the past. I want to prophetically say tonight, it's not going to look the way it used to look. it's gonna look much better than how it ever looked. And the question is, will you have leaned in and been on a journey? And so the criteria for me is lean in, be available, get back to that entrepreneurial, I'm back to like grit and grind. Like, what does it take? I'll do whatever it takes.
Yes.
I want to be a part of a move of God in Miami. I'm committed to seeing a harvest come in. That's what I'm living my life for.
So good. Come on, put your hands together. That's beautiful. Heart and Soul is 5:45 in the morning at iTech and then staying till 11 p.m. at night, okay? Tanner Lakey never did that, and he's questionable.
Yes.
No, but when I think about...
The question is, do you think you could do that again?
Easy.
Yeah, right.
So easy.
Yeah. Look
I
at
have 2 kids now. I barely sleep.
There you go.
That's
It'll be easier. Yeah.
Easier. No, but I think what you're saying is so powerful. Like we say here at VU that our methods come and go, but the message always remains the same. When I think about our leadership core and I think about Heart and Soul, it's like our strategy may change, what you experience may change, but the heart and soul has to stay the same. Yeah. So the last 5 years were awesome, but now you could re-up in the next 5 years with the same heart and soul you had previously. But if you're new on the journey, it's your opportunity to adopt this heart and soul and carry this heart and soul into the future. So I'm pumped for it. Last year, we talked about it a little bit, but it was very unconventional, challenging in a lot of ways, but also revealing in a lot of ways. For you as church leaders, as pastors of a large community here in South Florida, what's the biggest lesson that 2020 taught you?
You want to take that, DC?
Yeah, I think there have just been so many lessons that we've learned in 2020. I think that the biggest lesson we all learned is that whatever our idea of what church is, that can change in a moment. But we are still the church. So however you saw the church, it's not about what day we gather on. It's not about the songs necessarily, the newest song. It's not about, what the edgiest thing is. All of those things are amazing tools that we value. So don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it because we value it and it brings people to know Jesus. But I do think that 2020 taught the global church that God is building his church and that the church is not weaker for 2020. We are stronger and that we leaned in together and that we're unified. And if we tried to pull the pieces together ourselves, we would have crumbled because it would have been our strength. But that's not what the word says. It says, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit. And so it's the Spirit of God that strengthens the church. And it's not the World Wide Web. It's not any of that. It's the Holy Spirit who is quicker than the internet and who is more powerful and can communicate far more than even what the internet holds. The Holy Spirit holds all the depth and beauty and character and the nature of God. And he is speaking around the world all the time. And so it didn't come as a surprise to him that COVID came. And he was prepared to equip his church to help people in need. And so I think that it reminded all of us that when we see our world shaken, that God is not shaken. And that when everything in our lives fall apart, that God still holds us. And it's one thing to sing it in 2019. It's another thing to live it in 2020. And I think that that's what we experienced. And I think my prayer going into 2021 is that we not forget the fervency in which we prayed in 2020, that we not forget the trust that we placed in the hands of God, that we not get complacent or comfortable again. And I think the best days are in front of us if we can stay close to the cross and fully relying on him.
Beautiful.
I would just echo DC. I mean, I think there's just so many revelations and lessons. I think that when you go through storms, when you go through pain, C.S. Lewis, he says it this way, that God, he whispers in our pleasures, but he shouts in our pain. And so I could talk to you honestly for days about lessons I learned in 2020, but I think the one that's important for all of us is I just recognized once again a new revelation of the importance of community. Yes. And I love these nights. They're talking about commitment and, making a challenge to all of us. But we need to make sure that we also recognize as we talk about that challenge and that cost and that price, that we balance that with this beautiful benefit called community. That this was, for me, such a difficult year, and I don't think we're out of it yet. I love that we've closed the chapter on 2020, but we're still kind of I think we're still in the game, man. So I don't want to act like it magically went away, but man, prosperity will bring you friends, but it's poverty that'll prove your friends. And it's like these moments where it's like, yo, church is popping and everyone wants to be around it. You put a pandemic on that thing and figure out, all right, who's really up in this? And I'm just thankful for the men and women that have shown themselves to be so faithful. I don't think I would be standing here today with hope for the future. I love what we're seeing tonight. Start crying when Phil Bixby, man, I've been doing a lot of life with that guy. I could throw a stay-in party for that man. When he starts singing that beautiful song that I'm dancing on, a hopeful future and the dreams to come. That's what's in my heart tonight. My soul is singing. Doesn't mean that my circumstance is good, but a big reason why my soul is singing tonight, even though my world can be shaking, is because the faithfulness of proven people in the hardest and most difficult times that said, I'm in this thing, heart and soul. And I don't know, for me, that gives me a lot of confidence. That gives me a lot of courage. I don't know about all the numbers. I don't know about all the metrics. I don't know if we could open up tomorrow, if all the seats are filled. Like, I don't know if all 6,000 people are back in seats tomorrow. I don't know about that. What I do know is there is a faithful church. There is a community of men and women that are saying, you know what? I want to see God do something in Miami, and come hell or high water, I'm a part of this place. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. And that's brought such encouragement to my mental health, my emotional health, and of course to my spiritual health. And so that's been a huge lesson for me, just the importance of incredible people, you know?
Yeah, and if I could just honor you for a second, both of you, because I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is the significance in the voice of a leader. You know, I think we undervalue the weight that is attached to the leaders in our lives, and specifically the voice that they have in our lives. And so many examples this year, so many organizations kind of plummeting downward, and it's because at the very top, they didn't have a leader that provided clarity, provided vision, provided direction, provided confidence, and I think you guys did that exceptionally well. So come on, put your hands together if you agree with that. I want to go down a vein. I want to go down a vein of something you just said. So you said there were moments of 2020, though, that were frightening, that were a little bit scary, if you will. For you guys, what was the scariest revelation as leaders? What was the scariest revelation as pastors in this city that you recognized in 2020?
Wow. I thought we were going to go through like the growth track.
It would be, if I can be honest, if I'll just dive in.
Don't say it! No, I'm kidding. Like, I don't know, yeah.
It would be several different things because there were so many different battles going on in 2020. So I think when it comes to church, the scariest realization for me is how quickly people can isolate when church doesn't look the way that it used to look. That as many avenues as you extend to continue to serve, continue to build, right there from your home, continue to watch, continue to participate, because it's not the way that you want it or the way that it used to be, that it's put aside until it's back how you like it. Then there's another front with the racism of our nation. And I think the scariest realization that I had in 2020 is that there really are people that are unaware or blind to the sins of our nation. And then when you go to the political side, the scariest thing for us is that people who both are a part of the kingdom of God would attack one another instead of having grace, understanding that one side is not God's side and one side is not the devil's side. That somewhere in the middle, intertwined in so many different issues, that God is in the middle of it all, wanting to use his church. So I think those are the three different areas that is a realization that is good for us as the church, because we need to be honest with our weak spots, and allows us to know that we need to have and continue to have important conversations around all three of those fronts, because the enemy uses all three of those fronts to divide the church, to weaken our legs, to slow our feet, and to keep our hands reached inward. And as long as we stay in that position, we really can't be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so I think one of the things that VU Church decided in that scary realization, as our church took sides, as people stepped out, as there was division, as there was pain and brokenness, is that we said we're not going to shrink back from it. We want to put language to the things that our church is facing. And so I think moving forward, all of those conversations will continue to be had. We're not going to back away from the tough conversations. Sometimes it's difficult because we're family, but family fights for one another and family is honest with each other. I don't want to have a surface level conversation. I want to go the distance and I want to know why we're doing what we're doing. And so those were the realizations for me.
I think you nailed some things that are certainly hot topics and pitfalls that are just wedges that create such division. And I don't think that you can just avoid these things and have this sense of peace. I think you have to confront, and whatever we avoid, the enemy invades. But I think that Don Cherie speaks for both of us when just a lot of just surprised and shock how the body of Christ has responded. And I'm not, once again, even as I say this, it's like there's this fear that somehow I'm being political. And that's like I'm a Jesus guy. I still remember that. I love that story of Joshua where it's like, hey, he goes out and there's a type of Jesus, the angel of the Lord, and it's like, hey, whose side are you on? And the angel of the Lord says, neither. And the idea is that it's not about, is God on my side? It's like, are we on the Lord's side? And I see Jesus in between two thieves on a cross, He's the man in the middle. He's seeking to bring people together. And I don't know about you, I'm not up for a civil war. Like, I don't know, like I just hear some of this rhetoric. I'm not like, I'm seeking peace. I'm seeking to learn. And so that's not because I'm weak. I just think I've counted the cost and going, I want to bring Jesus to a lost and dying world. And I think it's been a bummer that so on both sides, people get so lost and say, I can't have anything to do with you. It's like, man, I wrote a whole book called Friend of Sinners that just because we disagree doesn't mean we can have to disrespect. And it's been challenging for sure. I would also say,
I want to jump in really quick. One of the funniest misconceptions about Rich's book is that people thought he was talking about Christians being friends of sinners. And it's like, no, Jesus is the friend of sinner. We are the sinners.
Right.
And sometimes, right?
Right.
Like they're like, that's kind of weird, like calling yourself friend of sinners. What are you trying to say there? We're like, okay, this book is not about us, okay? This is all about Jesus.
I had a friend who was a non-Christian, and I was writing that book, and he was like, bro, I don't know if you should write this. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, kind of arrogant, don't you think? I'm like, no, bro, it's not, Jesus is the friend. We are all on this level playing field.
That is the dangerous part, is that Christians can take on that mentality. We can look at each other and act like, oh, you're the sinner. And it's like, no, man, we're all in the same bucket. By the grace of God, we are here. We're saved. We're set free. Like, that's it. End of story.
I think on the other side of just church side, because I think this is fun stuff just to voice, because I think we can hear things, and hopefully as we're hearing stuff and processing out loud, there's little moments of going, oh, wow. Like, I think the other side of all this is just this concept that, like, I didn't sign up, and I just want to clarify, and I don't ever want to be Debbie Downer or Mr. Negative. I am all for, like, the new ways that God is working. But, like, when you cut me open, you say, what are you passionate about? I think I've said this from day one, but I think it's these kind of moments that proves it. Like, I am what you call a local church guy. And what that means is that God has given both of us opportunities throughout the years. I don't know how it all played out, that we found ourselves at conferences and events, and we've gotten to write books, and we've gotten to have a voice into the global church. And I love that, and I'm so thankful for that. But that has never been my priority. That has never been my pursuit in life. I have always been called to be what I believe is a local church pastor, which is we're doing life in community. We're forming a community. It's not about just a talking head. It's not about just being a really great teacher. It's about raising up and empowering and releasing leaders. It's about seeing the fivefold ministry grow forth underneath your leadership. It's about seeing new apostles and new evangelists and teachers and pastors. And it's about planting churches. It's about sending out missionaries. That's what really, to this day, still gets me fired up. I suppose a little bit of what has been interesting, once again, is just like, I think the question you're kind of saying is like, what's been like the hard lesson or the shocking lesson, or like how did you voice it? I want to make sure I'm answering.
Scariest
one is just how many people that I thought was on board with that that's like scattered to like, I'm just gonna be a part of the Christian consumer thing and just go to the brand new, whatever the new TV ministry is, AKA the internet preacher, and just go to that. It's just like, that's a great supplement, but what we're doing here is much more than a word that we bring on Sunday. What we're trying to do here is give you an opportunity to raise up and become all that God has called you to become. And yeah, those are the parts I'm still kind of working out as we get into 2021. I'm like, I like some of this stuff I'm seeing, but I don't want to fall into just the metrics of how did YouTube do and how's the Instagram account going. Not a hater of that stuff. We are doing that and having meetings and learning those things, but I want to figure out how to do the both and that we're going. We're still carving out a local community in the heart of Miami where there's real people that, I'm not just watching the fire on TV. I'm getting near the fire and feeling the warmth of it. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think systemic change comes from systemized community. And I think that's what the power of the local church is. We can have a global footprint, and that's awesome, and we're going to figure out how to do that the best way that we can, but Miami's our city, and then after Miami, another city, and then another city, because we want to create local change. So I think that's beautiful. Let's shift now. We've been talking about 2020. Let's go to 2021.
Praise God.
Come on now.
It's a night about vision, and
Yeah.
just
We're going to get there. Let's talk about the growth track.
doing a full eulogy of 2020. I thought we already did these moments.
Right, my bad.
Growth track, step one. No, okay, sorry.
Exactly. No, I mean, the Dakota Jam and I were kind of trying to hit on it, but this season for VU is a different season.
Yeah.
For you, how would you classify this season? What's different about this season right now that we're in January 20th, 2021 from any other season we've been in the past?
Well, I think that so many different mediums that we're learning and growing. Once again, we're in a studio right now. Like people that are here, if you've never been in the studio, like this is kind of different. Like there's people back cameras shouting right now. There's doors, like all these things that we've like fought for 5 years to be the opposite of. Now we're like learning. And so I think there's this massive, massive learning curve. But like I love the language Dakota was using. Yeah. Just about I don't want to fixate on the obstacles. I want to see the opportunity. And what is the opportunity? The opportunity is that we're able to reach so many more people. There's like it used to be kind of like confined to this one-time experience that you had to get in the room for, and it kind of felt like really cool that like either you were there and you missed it. And I like all that, but I also like the idea that like 7 days a week. Every day, every minute, we can be providing all sorts of different niche content to meet people right where they are. I think there's just endless opportunities to reach people, but there's a huge learning curve. And so when you say like, what are these things that are different that we're focused on? It's like, we have to grow. We need new leaders to step up, and the ways that we used to do things are not gonna be the ways that we're gonna do things in this new space. I have to learn. I have to grow. What I did in the past, Don Tree just said, it's not going to cut it in the future. I don't want to expect a new harvest, and I'm not planting any new seed. And so I just think all of us, we have to have this idea of this mindset and this heart of going, I want to stay open to learning and to growing. And I don't know it all. I think I saw a quote the other day, any person who steps into your life knows something that you don't know. What a powerful concept that like there's new people around that know something that I don't know. We have a strong culture that I want to maintain, but I want us to have this learning idea of going, let's try some stuff. Let's experiment. Let's be okay with making a mistake and failing. Let's not get locked into this idea that, what worked in the past is going to work again in the future.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are there. They want to grow. They want to know how to be helpful in this season. So I think right now is the perfect time to just provide practical handles.
Yes.
How can you be the biggest asset to VU Church in this season? What would you say? What are practical handles you want people to walk away with tonight?
Okay, so there are a lot of different ways that we have the opportunity to build the church. It's so cool the way that God designed it. We didn't design this framework. This is actually God's building that he's building. We all get to be a part of it. It's going to be standing long after we're all gone. He's still going to be building it. There's ways that you can build God's church. You can build by serving. You can get on a team. That starts with growth track, like we were just talking about. You can build by being a part of a crew. If you just serve and then you're not a part of community, you're not going to reap everything that God wants in your life out of this church. You need community, and small groups really are the way that our church is pastored and led and supported, and people go through seasons together. One way that we don't talk about enough, and that as soon as you give your life to Jesus, you can literally, like, obviously we're on a path of sanctification, being shaped in the image of Jesus. That takes a lifetime. But you know one way that you can immediately start to build the church from the moment you decide to give your life to Jesus is through your finances.
Yeah. Right.
We don't talk about it enough because it's as simple as one decision to go, I'm gonna tithe. I'm gonna look to the Word of God for an example of putting God first, my first fruits. Rich and I, we're freakish about this. When we have income, it immediately is tithed on. We want God to get the first part of that. You don't have to wait until you're married to get serious about your tithe. You can be on a minimum wage job. You can be a college student, and God can bless your finances because you choose to tithe. And I wouldn't be honest with you if, as your pastor, I didn't tell you that if you are not tithing right now, you're missing out on all that God has for you. If you are choosing to trust in yourself more than you're choosing to trust in God, you're missing out on a huge part of the faith journey. So whether you're 19 years old, whether you are 40 years old, whether you are single, whether you are married, you may have been serving at this church for 5 years and you've never decided to entrust your finances to God. This should be the year that you do that. This should be the year that you experience what it means if the Bible talks about our treasure being where our heart is, if it talks about that the love of money is the root of all evil, man, I want to trust God, especially in my lack. Hear me, especially in my lack. Especially in my lack. So our church has so many young, amazing people. If we would start to walk in that way, I think that you would be amazed both in your individual life and in your buy-in. Doesn't matter how much you serve, there's only so much buy-in you can have until you put your money where your treasure is, and that will change your life.
One of the best things we did as we started our church is we really have operated from a value system, and there's 7 values. And I think what's healthy in every season is to look at those 7 values. We've always talked about the idea, these aren't the church's values, you're the church. These need to become the values of your home.
Yeah.
These need to become the values of your marriage. Jesus is our message. People are our heart. Excellence is our spirit. Generosity is our privilege. Servant leadership is our identity. Passion is our pursuit. Honor is our calling. What I think is important is that you can have a value. The point of a value is that in a changing world, you have a changeless core. And I think you should take your value and to the right of it in the season that you're in going, how am I practically living out that value?
Yeah.
So you're going like, what can people do right now? Because I think there are people that are engaged. It's like, I would just go through what the season of church looks like. It's going to require real flexibility. This week we're gathering in person. I don't believe in guilting people. That's like the dumbest way to lead. If you don't want to be there, you don't want to be there. But I do want to challenge people. If you're going to dinner, if you're going to your gym, you should be going to church. So we're at Jungle Island this weekend. In fact, we just signed up again for the following weekend. I'm just going to be real frank. It's a lot of money. Like, I don't even want to tell you because some people will be like, I'll just tell you. It's like $20,000 for a gathering there. So just, okay. Like, I'm telling you that because I want you to go, oh, we so value the coming together, not because we just like it practically, it's scriptural, that we're trying to walk that out. In fact, tomorrow, I'm going to record, get a whole team in here to create a great experience for Church Online. Then we're going to also show up and put even more energy into putting on a live experience because we value both these things. What I would say is, like, if you're heart and soul, if you're not out of town, be here and maybe consider not going to Disney this weekend because you went to Disney 28 times already this year. Or maybe don't go to Key West again. Like, go, I'm actually going to prioritize this thing called the church. I think, I just want to help people. It's like servant leadership is my identity. Cool to say. What does that look like for you, bro? Have you gone to I Love My City? Are you on any freaking team at all? Well, I've kind of graduated from holding signs. Really? Why? Right. What happened? What, like, I don't really need to like be on the team anymore, but it's my value. If you don't have a practical handle, then I don't know if it's really a value. Don Shree's talking about generosity. I think honor, honor's our calling. Tonight before the service, Zach Freeman, who's leading worship at Design District, Luke, who's leading over here, Manu, who's leading over there. I shot them individual texts, like, let's bring it tonight. Yeah. You got this, God's hands on you. That's a form of honor. Like, I think we got to get back into shooting texts out to people on your team. You're going to crush today as you serve. What about people our heart? Yo, like, have you evangelized at all in 2020 or 2021? Well, how would I do that, man? It's never been easier, but you actually have to attach a system. How about take the YouTube video and share it through a text message? My trainer, Manning Sumner, is relentless with being the text evangelist. He's got a list of 20 people that he is reaching for Jesus. He's like, hey, bro, here's a message for you. It's like, I think this message is about like making peace with your spouse. Are you trying to tell me something right now? He's like, maybe. He's always reaching people. I just think like, get done with church and text somebody. Like, create a list of 10 people that you're gonna be relentless with reaching. Heart and Souls tonight, you're a crew leader. Did you text anybody in your crew to tune into Heart and Soul? Like, I could just go on and on and on. I think RSVPs, like all this stuff, which is new, we say it this way at Heart and Soul. If everybody behaved like you, would our church be better or would our church be worse? And I don't think we ever graduate from that. I got to ask myself that. It's like, if everyone's behaving like me, thinking like me, praying like me, worshiping like me, leading like me, are we better or are we worse? And that's always the call of these nights. Always the call of these nights.
Last question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No, you're great. I was just going to add on to that. I think one of the most, when it comes to how can we build in this season, one of the most detrimental mindsets that we can have when it comes to church is to think that it's a hobby or it's something that just is, this is my me time. Sometimes people will come to church and they'll be an expert at something, but they'll want to serve in a really low capacity at church. And I get it, I really do. But friends, like, we're called to bring God our best. So if we're a great artist, then we want to bring our art to God first and foremost. If we're great at IT, then man, I want to elevate the church through IT. If I'm great at social, then I'm not just having me time, this is a hobby at church, and then I'm going and crushing it somewhere else 5 days a week. We see even from the first book of the Bible, how important it is that in our line of work that we bring God our best. You look at Cain, you look at Abel, you look at the offerings of God, and you look at great churches and movements built around the world, that the greatest artists brought their greatest art, that the greatest builders brought their best plans and engineering, that the greatest writers wrote their greatest hymns and their greatest songs. And it wasn't a time to just let off steam or relax. It wasn't a hobby. It was God, I'm bringing you my very best. It's a detrimental mindset when we go, this is just a hobby. It's a detrimental mindset when we think that church fits into our cookie cutter box, man. My heart for the church is that we as families would grow and embrace the church. Sometimes we think, oh, we're always at church. Friends, every gift that is in my life was drawn out by always being at the church. I was at church Sunday morning. I was at church Sunday night. I was at church Wednesday night for a Wednesday night service. I was at worship rehearsal on Thursdays. I was at youth on Friday nights. And you know what? It developed every part of my life. And it surrounded me with a community that spoke life over me. And here we are, and we think that serve one, sit one just on a morning, never one evening, 7 days a week is too much for us. We are shortcutting the plan of God for our families' lives. If we are willing to drive across town for soccer practice and for dance practice and for violin practice, but we are unwilling to put our kids in the house of God and for things to be messy for a little while and for them to be around, they're missing catching the spirit of what the global church is. It is not a program. It is not a program. We will push back on that forever. But we got to fight for this. And so my heart is Let's lean in this year. Let's embrace the messiness. The last picture I have of our last service before we went into quarantine is I have a picture on Sunday morning with Wyatt at VU Kids, and I have a picture Sunday night of him on my lap in big service Sunday night. And it's not easy and it's messy, and even tonight Wyatt had a meltdown as he's in service. But that's life. That's life. That's what it looks like. So let's do it. You're single, you're in college, you're working a job. God still wants to use you here. You're a grandparent. You have the wisdom we need. You have the expertise that we need. You have the discernment that we need. You have that mentorship that people are so desperate for and hungry for. They're starving for your voice in their lives. We really need you. So let's embrace it. Let's do it. I think this is our year. I'm more expecting than ever, Adrian. Like, I'm more expecting than ever. God's gonna develop us together.
One more. Yeah. I think it's important that we hear this as our pastors. What dreams are on your heart for this year?
Well, God has been extremely faithful. I mean, the idea that we ended the year with our largest single offering, stepping into almost 2021 now, it's close to, I think it's right at $2.4 million that's come in our Bricklayers Fund, which is just, it's insane. In the most difficult year, God has brought about the greatest blessings. There's so many things that I'm excited about. Right now, there's a couple properties that we're looking at, one that we're really even close to potentially putting under contract. I'm not at liberty to share all of it due to confidentiality things, but I think it's an opportunity for us to actually have a worship center. We'll see. Hopefully I'll be able to share more about that, but just crazy how God is lining things up. And all that it takes, like I just sensed coming in here tonight, like you can sense the passion and the energy inside of us. I was talking to some pastors. I have a friend who pastors a church in San Fran. They can't gather more than 10 people since March. And he literally said to me today, I said, how you doing? He said, you want the cookie cut answer? Or do you want the pastor cookie cut answer or want the real answer? I said, well, give me the real answer. He said, well, either we're gonna grind it out here and figure this out, or we're gonna have to go replant a church somewhere else, or we're gonna have to go do another thing with our life because we are just completely confused with all that's happening around us. And I just got to encourage him, for a minute, just going, life is challenging. If someone was to ask me, if you had to make two observations about life in general, what would those two observations be? I would say that life is always this. It is separated with these two observations: those that live disappointed and those that live grateful. And I am grateful for what God has brought us through. But when you say, what are the dreams in my heart for 2021? I'm telling you, we haven't scratched the surface. And God wants to do something bigger and better than we could ever imagine. I believe that we're going to close this year out with having a property. I believe that we're going to find land. I believe that we're going to build buildings. I believe that we're going to release. I'm excited about these worship songs. I'm excited for the friends and family network of helping resource other people. Not about look at us, but let us come alongside you and do the journey. I'm excited about seeing leaders raised up. I'm excited about seeing locations started back up and rooms full of people worshiping Jesus. I'm excited about seeing my friends in this city that don't know Jesus. We just moved down to the Coconut Grove area, and God's already opened up doors to meet people. I'm like, I can't wait to see the people in my neighborhood come to know Jesus.
Come on.
And these are the things that get me excited. These are the things that I want to live for. And I want to help raise up a community that lives for those exact same things. And so I've been saying it. You've been hearing me say it a whole lot on staff. That's probably why you're asking. 2021 is going to be our greatest year yet. All we got to do is endure through this, stick together, fight together, lean in, and watch what God does on the other side. Let's stay grateful. Let's stay grateful.
Hey, man, come on. I don't know about you, but that encourages me a whole lot on where it is that we're heading and what it is that's before us. And I know that this night is not about you. This is about the heart and soul of our church, but I think it's very important for you to know that the heart and soul of this church is behind you. We believe in you. We're grateful for you. And we recognize that God has ordained your lives and that God has purpose on your lives. And it's funny to talk about submission and all that kind of stuff, but this is a house that has a heart and soul for the vision that God has placed on your heart. And we're submitting. I believe this year this church is going to submit over to that vision in a grander way than it's ever done before. And I believe because of that, God has the best days ahead for
Amen.
VU Church ahead of us.
Amen.
Do you believe that? Come on, put your hands together. Awesome.